It's March 2026. The world is on the brink of a new kind of war. We're right in the middle of it. This isn't some far-off theory anymore. We are witnessing the very first true AI war, a conflict that is being fought at the dizzying speed of machines.
So, how on earth did we get here? To really get a grip on this, we need to look at what lit the fuse. The whole Eurasian maritime region has just flipped, almost overnight, from a really fragile peace to just open conflict.
This one sentence from a recent risk report is just chilling. It perfectly captures this massive shift in global security. Freedom of navigation used to be this fundamental right, something you could take for granted. Now, the report calls it a bargained-for commodity. Think about that.
A huge catalyst for all this has been America's Dawn Road Doctrine. Basically, by pulling back from its role as the world's maritime security guard to focus on its own backyard, the U.S. left this giant power vacuum in Eurasia. And as we're seeing, that vacuum is now being filled with fire.
And you can see on this timeline just how fast things spiraled out of control. It kicked off in late February with fighting between the US, Israel, and Iran. Then, reports came out about the death of Iran's supreme leader, and Tehran responded by blockading the Strait of Hormuz. We're talking a matter of weeks, and the world was suddenly on a war footing.
Now, here's what makes this so different. This is not a conventional war with fleets of battleships squaring off. No. This is a conflict being defined by new, accessible, and frankly, terrifyingly intelligent technology. The real battlefield has expanded from the open ocean to the server room.
Years before this all kicked off, people saw it coming. The U.S. Government Accountability Office was already mapping out the risks. They saw military AI as a kind of pyramid. Down at the base, you have the low-risk stuff, business operations, paperwork. But at the very top, the pointy end, with the highest risk to human life, are warfighting operations. And that category, the one with autonomous weapons, it's not a what-if anymore. It is a reality. And here you can see the new playbook in action. In the Red Sea, groups like the Houthis are using generative AI. We're talking AI that can literally create new strategies on the fly to coordinate these massive drone swarm attacks. And get this, they're identifying targets using old public databases and then deploying autonomous underwater vehicles and AI-guided explosives to just shut down these critical waterways.
What this does is it creates this huge, lopsided imbalance. On one side, you have these big naval coalitions firing incredibly expensive interceptor missiles. And on the other, you have swarms of cheap, AI-guided drones and explosives. The math just doesn't work. It's a completely unsustainable way to fight a war. You just can't win by firing $1 million missile at a $1,000 drone.
So, with technology moving this fast, the international rules, the norms that used to govern conflict, they're being left in the dust. There's this huge, gaping hole between what these new weapons can do and our ability to put any kind of guardrails on them.
And you can see that trend as clear as day in the data. Support for the REAIM summits, which, by the way, stands for Responsible AI in the Military Domain, it's collapsing. After hitting a peak in 2024, the number of countries willing to sign on to a shared framework for AI governance has just plummeted. Right at the moment we need more cooperation, the world is walking away.
And this really is the central, haunting question facing everyone today. World leaders, ethicists, military commanders. When decisions that affect life and death are made in microseconds by an algorithm, who is actually in control? Is anyone?
And the proof of this loss of control is everywhere you look. We're seeing this explosion of dark fleets, that ships just turning off their transponders to vanish. You have tankers flag hopping, constantly changing their country of registration to hide where they're from. The entire system of maritime law is literally crumbling before our eyes.
Okay, so this might all feel like a regional conflict, but it is sending massive shockwaves through the global economy, and it's affecting everything from shipping costs to the price you pay at the pump. Nothing happens in a vacuum.
Over $6 billion. Just look at that number. And that's not the total economic cost, that is just the lost revenue for Egypt's treasury. All because shipping giants are giving up on the Suez Canal and taking the much longer, much more expensive route around Africa.
This quote from an Indian newspaper just brings the human cost right home. The blockade of the Strait of Hormuz is choking off a huge slice of India's energy supply. So this isn't just about geopolitics. It's about fuel security. It's about economic stability for millions and millions of regular people.
And if that weren't enough, it's not just one crisis we're dealing with.
At the exact same time, there's this escalating environmental disaster in the Caspian Sea, and it's threatening the exact infrastructure of the new trade routes that were built to bypass these conflict zones. It is literally a crisis on top of a crisis.
So what does all this add up to? Well, the result is a fundamentally new strategic map. The very nature of global power, of who controls the seas, of economic stability, it's all being redrawn, right now, as we speak.
Ultimately, what this conflict really shows is that critical, life-or-death decision-making has moved. It's left the situation room and entered the server room. The world is now operating at machine speed, and we are all scrambling to adapt. The question really isn't if we can keep up anymore. It's how we can possibly redefine what control even means in an age of algorithmic warfare.